This is what once adorned the wall of the Salem family YMCA building on Court Street, just blocks from the Oregon State Capitol. Dedicated in August of 2011, the River of Peace Mosaic was a massive, joyful undertaking involving over 600 members of the community from ages 3 to 85 who created it with bits of porcelain, glass, and stone tile, and wrote poetry to express that Salem means peace. It was a community prize owned by the city of Salem. It came to be known as the Salem Peace Mosaic. But the brick building, built in 1926, was old and risky. It was demolished in 2019, saving the treasured mosaic, which is now in carefully packed storage. It will have a new home, adorning another building at Riverfront Park's Hazel Patton Carousel, once enough funds are raised to build the stable addition. Poets inspired by the mosaic and its embrace of the message of peace explored various meanings of peace at a workshop and how it may be found. The result was an anthology of poems called Salem Means Peace. In its foreword, poet and author Eleanor Berry writes, "They find it in their fragmented selves and lives. They find it, or they yearn for it, and strive to create it. Together, the poems in these pages form a sort of mosaic of peace, like the Salem Peace Mosaic itself, by a diverse community." InSight is honored to share some of those poems, read aloud by the poets who wrote them.
My first poem is called Quiescence, inspired by a watercolor of White River Falls. Is peace the opposite of adventure, of turmoil, of chaos, of war? Or does it always exist, hidden within each turbulence, like a cell quietly going about its business, producing, supplying its own existence, underlying, stabilizing the energy of life? My second poem, the title is Sunrise. There is a peaceful feeling at sunset, a cooling, slowing down. But sunrise holds promise and assurance of opportunity, a new beginning. It is so big. I am small, but a part of something glowing with a calm energy. When watched, it seeps slowly over the earth, but usually it just sneaks in when I am not looking, just like peace.
To you, daughters, I knew all along you'd be travelers, so eager to be somewhere you didn't know the rules or hadn't decoded the spoken words, relishing life like a dish you hadn't yet tasted. Expect the unexpected, the motto in our house as you grew. I wanted you to try it all, to talk with strangers, stand strong to your beliefs, your name. You won't recall the trailer we lived in before we moved to the cul-de-sac off 48th, but you'll remember the house on Sonia, the acre where you tended the animals, making paths through the field in the thick grass of summer. Together as a family, we'd study the insects, the stars, plant a tree for each of your years, identify the birds that circled the call of the geese, watch them through binoculars so you could see whether they were westerns or cacklers. Now, you tell your children to go outdoors each day, put their hands in the garden soil, urge them to describe the snow as it falls on their cheeks. During the ice storm, when the pines we'd planted for your first year split and fell, leaving an opening that showed the heart of them, that cut deep in me too, like a parting with no goodbye. So I'm writing this in a quiet house after a day worn thin from the latest news, a new virus, 10 wars still raging somewhere through the world. And I want to let you know that your dad and I are trying hard to dream peace tonight, and maybe all the nights after this, even though an army could be ready to crest the hill, and we're still here waiting at the end of the worn path, our door ready to swing open.
This poem is called Marigold, and it's inspired by a painting by James Southworth of that very subject and title. It makes reference to the fact that a bee has a curious kind of vision when it approaches a flower. As it approaches the flower, it initially sees in black and white, and only when it gets very close does its vision become color vision. It also is quite specific about the structure of the flower. Marigold, after a painting by James Southworth. Is this how a bee sees it? Close up, when the black and white has switched, as in a cinematic special effect, to color? A single flower fills the field of view. No, not a single flower, but many tiny true flowers, tight packed into a central disc, ringed round by two concentric tiers of brightly colored tabs. Radial symmetry making a target, directing the bee to the bullseye of the disc, thick with vials of nectar. A marigold is a sun that the bee can plunge into without harm, where it can home in on the center, land there, and sup. And this oversized marigold of paint is a sun that I can gaze at unscathed, where I can bask in a blaze of red, orange, and gold, missing only the familiar late summer tang of the real flower's smell.
This first poem is ekphrastic, was inspired by a painting in the gallery at Bush Barn. And it's called Pink, the Color of Life. And this was before the Barbie movie. Pink roots and red blood rivulets wend their way, seeping through plastic, reaching down through human clay and black soil. When roots like these reach deep, not to be prevented or blocked by concrete, we feel all is well. Pink is the color of the sky at sunset and in the bathtub after my boy's bath. It's the furry dice hanging in the windshield of that '57 Chevy, and it's the color of the trout's underbelly that I caught in Spring Creek Pool before the knife enters to clean it. Pink appears at the bottom of these steps. Looking through a window just inches away, we see the perfect pink California sage with a honeybee alighting on bud after bud, sampling nectar. And that was in July. This is another season-related poem called The Advantages of. The advantages of raindrops on the tips of leaves in the morning, drips frozen into diamonds overnight. Of TV in the morning house alone, no one watching, just a patter of reassuring voices. The advantages of the person sitting at the next table, eyes open to a wider view. Advantages of colors in the morning sky at dawn. Sounds of animals and their walkers at dusk, and owls hooting, calling who. Of mourning doves cooing for love, partners for life. The advantages of agates on the seashore, polished by waves the size of softballs. Of daffodils blooming along highways in spring. Of wild blackberries ripening in late summer beside the road, staining the fingers of children out of school. The advantages of napping on the couch on long afternoons, and of waking up.
This is a poem inspired by a painting by James Southworth, Interlude Under the Sky. There is peace even in the storm, Vincent van Gogh. Charged air like waves rolls over the fields. Flowers and grass flap and touch me, tug on my coat as I walk on the road and pick up a broken rock from the clotted ground. The clouds undulate above as the sun races down the sky, arresting this blue and green. Such immaculate white to find a glow in the fields, to see rising from the maze of wind, sky, and rain. In the distant roar and clap, the wild birds circle. A dove struggles on her nest and coos. Let my head soak when the clouds break. Let my feet leave pavement and roll through softly waving golden grass. In a stiff wind, I know all goodbyes will end in glad hymns, will return in earth. Black hills, trees, indistinct in the distance are my witness. That old weight in my arms, why continue to measure? Let everything fall to the kind ground.
My poem is entitled Your Peace is Your Peace, inspired by a painting by Tammy Jo Wilson. In being who you are, not what society says you are, not the disconnected parts, the ruins that you thought you were. The puppet strings have been cut. The small bit you've kept close is knocking on the door. It is growing louder, bigger, bolder, to be at peace with who you are. Hold its hand, nourish it. Breathe life into who you are. Look at it from all angles, those fragments, puzzle pieces, ephemera. Look with your eyes, the eyes of intense passion for all you are. Your pieces stitched together through time and space are your peace. My second one is inosculation, which is a natural phenomenon which occurs in tree trunks and branches or roots when the two grow together. They stood separate yet close, longing to embrace each other, branches touching as the wind blew, their roots entwining within the dark, life-giving soil. Years came and went. Inosculation, their wound wood rings calling them together, holding them in a peaceful closeness. No longer separate beings, tall and sprawling branches reaching out now as one, shading their life-giving earth. Tendrils of roots now form strength that only happens with a peaceful, embracing closeness.
This first poem is called Old Growth, and it's about fighting in a beautiful place. We stomp over the trail, looking under leaves for healing, waiting for the mycelium blooms to thread their winding way to connect us again. Wagging tails, the dogs run laps between us, nuzzling wet noses into our waiting palms. Teach me the silent communication between tree and truffle. Teach me the patience of the ents. Show me the way the ent wife wandered, twining deep into earth, evaporating weightlessly into sky, or disguised and right in front of us. I will find her, and I will bring her back to you dancing, confetti still half entwined and twirling from her hair. This poem is about teaching. New. Let me see through the shiny veneer of today's new, and let me find the love hidden in our awful history. The one little candle held up tippy-toes high, the spark passed, sputtering, flickering, its light scattered across linoleum, kerosene-soaked wood, and spider-webbed windows. Let me, on straining feet, hold that candle for a little while longer. Let me see just well enough to find a way through. Let me lead just long enough to take a few steps. Let me move with just enough grace to hold up this lantern and pass it to you.
This first poem I'm going to read is dedicated to and inspired by Carolyn Hale, whose art I witnessed at the Bush Barn Art Museum, and by my mother, who died 9 years ago. Kindred souls. I come to the gallery seeking solace for a recent loss, not to mention a world in turmoil, future under threat, a loss recalling yours, the most profound I've suffered. But the plethora of bright gardens and bouquets, with their brilliant reds, oranges, purples, and golds, serves only to mock my somber mood. Even falling water, still pools, and surging surf fail to refresh my fevered spirit. At last my eyes are drawn to a small sketch, one of a series of seasonal scenes labeled July and entitled Hopeful. July, the present month, the month of your birth, the month 100 years later when we scattered your ashes atop the hill you loved and rendered in a drawing of your own. What rivets me is both the subject, two green acorns nestled in a bed of oak leaves to represent the white oak's fruiting season, and its medium, colored pencil, your own favorite. The drawing, with its dark background, bears an uncanny resemblance to one of yours, hanging from my kitchen wall. Just beneath Hopeful hangs the artist's August image, lush green fronds viewed from a nearby bench and entitled A Place to Rest. August, a month you loathed for its heat, dust, smoke, and fear of the farmhouse well run dry. But your creative well did not, for I still have your peaceful harvest scene, the view from our front door. Two aging maples shade a walk that leads the eye across the country road to a golden field, a forest in the background, mountains more distant still. As I stand and gaze before Hopeful and A Place to Rest, a sense of deep repose steals over me and of communion with you two artists, kindred souls, one of whom still nurtures me. The second poem I'm going to read was written several years ago and inspired by the performance of Handel's Messiah. Hallelujah. Driving home from a hearing of Messiah, I see the full moon rise above the mountains to the east, their sharp peaks softened by a rosy range of cumulus clouds, like puffs of cotton candy spun from the hand of some unseen confectioner, whose wisp of floss now floats across the moon. Seeking the source of the glorious unearthly glow, I glance through my rear-view mirror and see the red sun sinking in the west. Finding the light too bright to be believed and sharing with Thoreau a preference for the real, however mean it prove, I remove my glasses, not the least rose-tinted, but dark, to guard against the noonday glare. Immediately, the pink pales, the glory goes. Here's truth, I sigh, and fabulous enough, this simultaneous sunset and moonrise. Transfiguration is but distorted vision. Yet, as I round the last bend towards home, Handel, whose close acquaintance with the night, whose tempering by the refiner's fire made him a great confectioner himself, sweetening the dissonant strains of deep despair and death with tenderly spun soprano arias, makes me replace my glasses, for, as he would have us see, it is only through a dark lens that every valley shall be exalted.
We leave you with the reflections of former poet laureate Pauline Paulson, whose words from her poem are woven through the mosaic.
I am an Oregon native. I was born in Portland and have lived my whole life in Oregon. And when Lynn Nakata contacted me as Oregon Poet Laureate to see if I would write something for the Peace Mosaic that they were designing, that she was directing the design of, I happily said that I would try to do that. And I started looking at, actually I went to Wikipedia and looked at what Wikipedia had about the city of Salem. And I was stunned to find out something that, as a native, I hadn't truly realized, and that is that Salem, the word Salem, means peace. How wonderful to live in a state where our capital is named for peace, accord, harmony. So I wrote a small poem, and Lynn chose to use the whole poem on the mosaic. And in the poem alludes to the fact that the word Salem means peace. The poem also alludes to the fact that when map makers for road atlases or any kind of map, when they want to designate a state capital, they have a special symbol that they use on the map to let you know that is the location of the capital of that state. Capital for Salem, Oregon. River-carved city, green with leaf light, in you our civil law is born. Beneath your rotunda that shoulders the sky, a chord calls us to set conflict aside. Salem, we're speaking peace each time we say your name. Salam, shalom. At your sight, our map makers place a star's steady shine. I saw this piece growing up every week when I went for dance classes, and it always captured my attention and made me fall in love with it. Please don't take that wonder away from other little girls. This art is symbolic of something greater than the sum of its parts. I walked by the Peace Mosaic while living on the streets. It turned my whole day and attitude around. Salem needs more beautiful things like that at the YMCA. It is one thing to have a piece of public art in a city, and that is valuable. It's invaluable. But this work of art is not just in Salem. This work is about Salem. This work is dedicated to Salem. The poem I wrote that is on this mosaic is not just about Salem. In the poem, I speak to the city. I say Salem each time we speak your name. You know, we're speaking peace each time we say your name. So this is about Salem. It is part of Salem, and it is to me tremendously moving that so many people in the community had a role in it, created a piece of it that is there for us to look at, to touch, to enjoy. It is a very unique piece of public art and well worth our endeavors to save it.
To learn how you can help the mosaic into its new home, visit SaveTheSalemPeaceMosaic.org and SalemCarousel.org. Thank you for joining us today on InSight. I'm Wendy Brokaw.